What are sayings you grew up hearing only to find out they were unique to your family? Growing up with an Asian mom that was working on perfecting her English, she would often say, "Oh, that is the suck," instead of, "You know, that sucks." Didn't take long for us to catch on and correct her, but it was so funny we just kinda stuck to it. So when something is shitty now, I'll instinctively say in my head, "Well, that is the suck." I had an Indian chemistry teacher in high school who would try to get a rowdy class to settle down by saying, "We don't want the clowns to come around." What he meant was, "Stop clowning around, you little assholes." Oh, this is a great place to put this story. Sorry for format. Growing up, I spent a lot of time at my grandparents' house, and for years and years and years I always heard my grandpa calling my grandma Dingwa. I thought maybe it was a made up pet name for her. Cue me in my freshman policy class when I'm 19 years old learning about the Vietnamese War. We went over a lot of vocabulary words and one pops up I recognize. Dingwa. It means telephone in Vietnamese. So my whole childhood I thought my grandpa was calling my grandma some cute nickname when in reality he was telling her the phone was ringing. She's got an ass like a harvest frog. From my Irish granddad. I still don't know what it means. Though I do know it wasn't a compliment. My favorite one like that is, "She tear up the floorboards looking for a bit of pipe." Whenever I didn't like something, my dad would say, "Well, it likes you. It called the other day and said so." It could be anything. Broccoli. A hamburger. The neighbor's cat. Whatever I didn't like or want to try. He had always gotten a call. My dad did the same thing. If I said I didn't like mushrooms, for example, he'd say, "Well, I've never heard them say a bad thing about you." When something new turned up and we'd ask my dad where it came from, his reply was always, "Stole it from a blind man down on the corner." Secretly, there is now a blind man who can't seem to remember where his stuff is and thinks he's going insane. Or he's now super paranoid of thieves. When mom was angry about something and we'd ask her what's for lunch, she'd put her hands on her hips and exclaim, "Fried assholes." Double quote. My mom would say ospos en rape, Afrikaans. Directly translated, it means ox vagina and radishes. Mom. You'd never notice on a galloping horse. No one really looks closely at you. In my house, the equivalent was a blind man running for a bus would be pleased to see it. My nan and mum would always say, "You're nosy for a cabbage," when I would try to ask about stuff that wasn't my business. Not sure if it's unique to us, but I've never heard anyone else say it. France children are not brought by the stalks, but found on the cabbage fields. The kids usually get called little cabbages. Ma petit Joe. Sorry, my French is a lot rusty. And I don't know the gender of nouns anymore. It can be that your family saying is based on this. Do you have French ancestry? Or live in an area where French ancestry is common? Or the language is spoken regularly? If we were having a hard time doing a puzzle or something, mum would tell us, "You gotta hold your teeth right." Whenever she bought us presents, they came from the getting place. Oh hey. We had a getting place too. Haven't heard that phrase in a while. I think once I started getting more specific about what gifts I wanted, my mom stopped using it. So that brings me back. What I still don't understand is, what are you doing? Posing for animal crackers? Double quote. I mean, I understood the meaning, but the reference was beyond me. Basically, when I was standing around during work and not doing anything. Dad had a lot of weird ones. My dad doesn't swear, so he always uses the word suck. What the suck is going on here? You're all sucked up. It would always make me and my friends laugh. He also uses the word bunghole. That guy's a real bunghole. He has a ton of other phrases I can't think of right now. Hahaha, my husband does that when he's singing along with rap songs. It sounds so ridiculous, but I think he finds it amusing since he does occasionally curse. My dad always said life is like a bowl of cherries, but you just gotta watch out for the tea underneath. And to this day I have no f***ing clue what it means. I asked him and he said, "One day you'll get it." Well, Dad, I'm 36 and have no clue. Edit. No response yet. I'll update as soon as we talk. I have a guess. It's probably a crude saying. Cherry is slang for vagina. Of course. And the sh-t underneath is a reference to the nearby anus. Dad doesn't want to explain it because he is being gross. You got goats. My family's way of saying you had a wedgie. Because it looked like there was a goat in your crack eating your pants. Quite embarrassing when I found out that wasn't a common phrase. That's funny. My dad would ask if your ass was hungry and follow it up with pointing out that it was eating your pants. I'm sure this is actually super common. But it comes from my great grandma. She only spoke Hungarian and what little English she did know were translations of her favorite Hungarian swears. She would often call people, especially my father, bitch bastard in both languages. It stuck and most of my family on that side refer to each other as bitch bastards. Which does cover most bases. Anytime I'd ask my mom where she was going she'd shout, "Crazy. Want to go with me?" Double quote. Also, if you asked her to make you a sandwich she'd always say poof. You're a sandwich. Double quote. My dad also used the word dumbard a lot. Like his own personal synonym for dumbus. The term to disconquer meaning to disagree. Tried using it once in a class and got some serious sideways looks. Teacher had to break it to me that it is not a valid word. 1. Whenever I'd get in trouble, my mom always used to say, "Girl, you must think fat meat ain't greasy. I'ma show you." Never understood what it meant and to this day, I barely understand. Looked it up recently though. And apparently it's a phrase that is pretty much exclusively used by African Americans. 2. Almost forgot about this one. But when I'd ask my mom what was for dinner, one of her favorite responses used to be, "Air pie and wind pudding." Never heard anyone else in my life say this LMAO. My mom said something really funny once while we were getting ready to run out. She said, "Mirror mirror on the wall, you better f***ing lie to me." Since then it's stuck and we say it before we leave to go out. Edit. Whoa. This blew up. I didn't expect this would be my highest voted comment. But I'm really glad it is. I told my mom about it and she laughed. I just want to thank her for her great sense of humor, beauty and wit. She's an incredible woman and is glad to bring some cheer. Edit 2. 0. Thank you for the 2 gold and the love. I wear. Whoa Jackson. Was something my dad always said. He swore it was a thing in the 70s. Which my mom would always shake her head behind him and mouth. It was never a thing. Double quote. What time dark was something we would say to ask like the general question of when was like dinner and downtime. Turns out my parents were ass-faced drunk on vacation in a different part of the world before me and my sister were born when my mom turned to my dad and proclaimed what time dark. Because she wanted to see the sunset but couldn't get the thoughts together. So from 1-16 I thought it was a common saying. And from 16-24 when my mom passed every time she said something stupid we would just go WH at Teamy Dark. Double quote. Red shoes. No knickers. Double quote. My mum said this. That there's an implication women wearing red shoes weren't wearing any undies. Still haven't met anyone who has ever heard of it. Whenever we were to fend for ourselves for dinner, my mom called it jetcheroni. Jetchioroni. Mine would say grab and growl. This meant that whatever was left over from the last week of meals was up for grabs. A million o'clock to express very late. Double quote. When did he call you? At like a million o'clock. I described my sister as looking 10 months pregnant because she was so big. Everyone looked at me like I didn't know how you couldn't be 10 months pregnant. My father has a bunch of them. But my favorites are, "You're shaking," or "shivering, like you're shitting peach pits." He'd say this me whenever I would exhibit the slightest sign that I was cold. Which he never seemed to be even on the coldest days. Slower than blue molasses equals slower than slow. Even slower than regular molasses. Usually said about a slow driver in front of him. Or to me when I was taking too long to do something, usually getting ready for school. More useless than tits on a boat equals even more useless than tits on a bull or boar. I'm convinced he used this because he once read the phrase wrong and mistook Bora's boat. I now realize this is racist as hell. So I hope it's buried, but I gotta share. My grandpa would say dot or feather to distinguish Indians from Native Americans. X. I met a nice Indian fellow at the store. Dot not feather. Double quote. When we dressed up and came see him, he would say, I wonder what all of the poor, ugly kids are doing. Double quote. Or to make fun of something I was wearing, usually shoes. AWW. I'm sorry baby. How long did the doctor say you had to wear that? He was a hilarious man. My grandpa, whenever we would have a big, extended family dinner, would always commence the meal by proudly saying, I wonder what the poor people are doing right now. Dot. It never made much sense to me, since we were never particularly well off. Sometime after my grandpa passed away, I asked my dad about it. So when my dad was growing up, they were even poorer, with both his parents being Italian immigrants. But my grandpa would always say, I wonder what the poor people are doing, before family dinners. It was his way of expressing how rich he felt simply because he was surrounded by family and had something to feed them, no matter how meager. TLDR. My grandpa taught me the value of family and counting your blessings. My southern grandmother had some good ones. Lord willing and the creek don't rise equals if all goes according to plan. As in we'll see y'all in a week. Lord willing and the creek don't rise. Double quote. Too much sugar for a dime equals trying to do too much with too little. As in you want to cook 12 side dishes, 4 desserts, and a turkey for 4 people? That's too much sugar for a dime. Double quote. She would also sign off on emails and cards the same way. Love a house a grandma, all one word like that. Some of the family have adopted it now, and I love that. My granddad had some good ones too. I remember playing a game with him as a kid where I'd try to get him to say his name and he'd always respond Puddin' Kane. Ask me again, I'll tell you the same. Makes no sense, but I loved it. Just like downtown, my immigrant dad has picked up a lot of American idioms, but some of them he's made up. He uses this whenever he thinks he done something really well, like a perfect parking job. He also uses actual phrases excessively. Like he'll also say call it a day after a perfect parking job. Really? He's just super proud of his parking skills. If someone said where is my random item, my dad would always say if it was up your ass you know. Still have never heard anyone else say that lol. My kids would say, have we all learned a valuable lesson? Double quote. I used to say that all the time when they were growing up. I still do. Comma, a good way to acknowledge that something went wrong without people getting all tense about it. My dad, to this day, would refer to someone f***ing up as they shti the stick. Example. My dad is an essential worker and did not experience a furlough from his job because of COVID. I, however, was furloughed from my job when our state shut down. So when I told my parents that I was out of a job, my dad looked me in the eye and asked, was it because of COVID? Or did you shti the stick? Double quote. COVID. Dad. No shitting of sticks for me. Edit. Spelling. My dad says loads of random shit. If we ask where the bin is, he always goes I've been here, where have you been? Also, my dad used to tuck me and my brother into bed and say no fidget fart arsing about, which just means don't mess about. My partner says piss farting on, and I thought that was hilarious when I first heard it. Our family calls dressing gowns gownies, and I've asked everyone I've ever met and no one else knows what I'm on about. I keep adding to this, but my dad is from a different part of the country to us, and he pointed out that me, my brothers and mom all say woo woo instead of woo wee, and he has been confused about this for years. My grandma shouted oh I cloth ears if she was talking to you and you didn't answer. Once a boy flashed me his penis in a park when I was 13. I ran back home crying and my dad said to me, tell him it's smaller than a budger's tongue. He says this about anyone with a small dick. I grew up with my family calling farts butter pops. I didn't realize it wasn't a universal saying until a few years back, and when I asked my mum, she told me it's pops from your bottom, like it was the most normal thing in the world. My grandfather had a few. Well, I'll be Jim Brown meant he was impressed by how fked up something could get. Frustrated. When you were knee high to a grasshopper meant. When you were a little kid. Yeah. And if a frog had wings it wouldn't bump its ass every time it hopped. When you theorized if something would happen that obviously wouldn't. He also pronounced Miami as Miama. Wash as wash and mosquitoes as skeeters. Growing up, whenever me or one of our siblings annoyed our parents, we'd ask them if they loved us. My mom of course would always say yes, but my dad would look us straight in the eye and say, do I love you? Yes. Do I like you? Absolutely not. Then walk away. As we all got older we thought this was the funniest thing in the world, but one time in my senior year of high school I had my friends over and they heard it and got so concerned that my father was emotionally mistreating me. Others may say these, but I've only heard my parents say them. Put a glass eye in a duck's ass and you could see that equals you're blind as a bat or stupid. We gotta douche this place equals thoroughly clean. On the subject of douches. Back when the phrase deuces was popular as a way of saying bye, my brother and I started saying douches to see if anyone ever caught it. Surprisingly few did.